The wind howled down the nearly deserted streets of Chicago, scattering brittle leaves like lost memories. Claire Morgan pulled her coat tighter around her thin frame as she waited alone at the bus stop. Her fingers, numb from the cold, trembled, not just from the winter air, but from the weight pressing on her chest. She stared blankly at the cracked glass panel beside her, where someone had scrawled in faded lipstick, "Hope is still out there." She wanted to believe it, but hope felt like a stranger she had forgotten how to find. Her phone buzzed in her pocket. A message from her mother. "How are you holding up?" Claire wiped a tear before typing back a hollow reply. Fine. She wasn't fine. Her job was gone, the apartment felt like a cage, and the silence in her heart was deafening. Tonight, the loneliness wrapped around her like the bitter wind, relentless, unforgiving. Across the street, Luke Bennett sat hunched on the steps of a shuttered storefront, nursing a cup of coffee. His eyes never left Claire. There was something about the way she held herself, fragile, yet unbroken. He took a shaky breath, wincing as his injured leg protested, and stood up. With quiet resolve, he crossed the street, coffee in hand. He didn't know her name, didn't know her story, but he felt, deep in his soul, that she needed this small act of kindness more than anything. Claire glanced up just as Luke reached the bus stop. Their eyes met for a brief moment, and in that instant, something shifted, though neither of them realized how profoundly. She took the coffee from his hands without a word, unaware that this simple gesture would mark the beginning of a journey neither of them expected, a journey of healing, hope, and a love neither thought they deserved. And in the chill of that lonely evening, two strangers would find the life-saving presence they never saw coming. Claire Morgan had always been the kind of person who put others before herself. Growing up in a small town in Illinois, she learned early the value of compassion from her mother, a schoolteacher who spent evenings tutoring kids from troubled homes. Claire's natural empathy led her to nursing school in Chicago, where she thrived despite the city's overwhelming pace. For years, Claire poured her heart into her work at Mercy Hospital, comforting patients, delivering babies, staying late for the ones who had no visitors. She wore kindness like armor, but beneath the surface, cracks had begun to form. Her fiancé, Jake, had once been her rock, the light at the end of long shifts and sleepless nights. But addiction crept silently into their lives, stealing him away in small, heartbreaking increments. At first, Claire believed love could save him, that her care and patience would be enough. But one cold February morning, Jake left without a word, vanishing like smoke through her fingers. Since then, Claire's world had shrunk to the size of her tiny apartment, cluttered with memories of what once was. The laughter they shared, the plans they made, the future that slipped away like sand through an open hand. She lost her job weeks ago, a victim of hospital budget cuts. The bills piled up. Friends drifted away, unable to understand why Claire's smiles faded, why her eyes held a distant sadness no one could reach. And yet, every morning, Claire forced herself to get dressed, to put on her scrubs and show up for the patients who still needed her. Because somewhere deep inside, a flicker of hope insisted on surviving. Luke Bennett's life had once been very different. A firefighter for over a decade, he had been known for his courage and quick thinking, the kind of man who ran into burning buildings while others ran out. But a devastating injury left him with chronic pain that refused to ease in a body that betrayed him. His wife, Emily, was his anchor. Her laughter was his refuge after grueling days and sleepless nights filled with physical torment. But when cancer claimed her 2 years ago, the ground beneath Luke's feet cracked wide open. The daughter they adored, Mia, now lived with her mother in another state, and their weekly calls were often strained by the distance and the weight of unspoken grief. Luke had drifted through days like a ghost, haunted by memories and a loneliness that no bottle or painkiller could numb. He wandered the streets of Chicago at night, searching for something, meaning, connection, maybe redemption. Despite the pain in his leg and the ache in his heart, Luke still believed in the power of small kindnesses. He knew firsthand how one gesture could change a life, because he'd been saved more times than he could count, by strangers, friends, and most of all, by his wife's unwavering love. That night, as he held 2 cups of coffee, he wasn't just offering warmth against the cold, he was reaching out to an invisible line connecting his broken heart to another. Claire's path and Luke's, so different in years and circumstance, were about to intersect in a moment neither could have predicted. 2 lives fractured by loss and hardship, both aching for a thread of hope to hold onto. Neither knew that this chance encounter would become a lifeline, a small act of kindness that would spark a healing neither thought possible, and a love that would grow quietly, like spring buds pushing through the frozen ground. The bus had just pulled away, leaving Claire standing alone beneath the flickering street lamp. Her breath formed little clouds in the freezing air as she wrapped her arms around herself, the weight of the world settling heavy on her shoulders. Her fingers trembled, not just from the cold but from the exhaustion of fighting invisible battles every day. The empty coffee cup in her hand was the only thing she'd managed to scavenge from the hospital cafeteria before it closed. Her thoughts spiraled, the eviction notice tucked away in her kitchen drawer, the silence of her apartment that echoed louder than any sound, the gnawing doubt whispering she wasn't strong enough anymore. Across the street, Luke watched her carefully. The man's worn coat hung loosely over his frame, but his eyes were steady, full of a gentle resolve. He gripped the 2nd cup of coffee as if it were a lifeline. Luke's leg throbbed sharply as he forced himself to rise from the cold steps. Each movement was a reminder of pain he tried to ignore, but his feet carried him forward anyway. He crossed the street with slow, deliberate steps, until he stood just a few feet from Claire. Her gaze was fixed on the cracked pavement, and she barely noticed him. "Excuse me," Luke said softly, careful not to startle her. "It's cold out here. I thought you might want this." He extended the cup toward her, warm steam rising from the lid. Claire looked up, startled. The stranger's voice was calm, comforting, a stark contrast to the storm raging inside her. She hesitated, the instinct to refuse warring with something deeper, a flicker of trust, fragile but persistent. "No, thank you," she murmured, shaking her head. Luke smiled gently, undeterred. "I don't want to intrude. Just, sometimes the smallest warmth can make the cold bearable." Her eyes searched his, and she saw no judgment, only kindness. Slowly, she reached out and took the cup, her fingers brushing his for a moment, a spark of human connection in the midst of her isolation. "Why are you being so kind?" she whispered, voice cracking. Luke shifted his weight, wincing at the sharp stab of pain in his leg. "Because I've been where you are. And because sometimes, someone else's kindness is the thing that keeps you going." Claire's eyes filled with tears she didn't bother to hide. "I'm tired," she admitted. "I don't know how much longer I can keep going." Luke's voice softened. "You're stronger than you think. And you don't have to do it alone." They stood there, side by side, sharing the warmth of the coffee and a rare moment of understanding. For a few minutes, the biting wind seemed to retreat, replaced by something quieter, something hopeful. Luke reached into his pocket and pulled out a small folded card, his daughter's favorite cafe, the one place that still felt like family to him. "Here," he said. "If you ever want to talk, or just get out of the cold." Claire smiled through her tears, clutching the card like a lifeline. That night, the life-saving presence Claire passed without knowing was no longer invisible. It was real. It was Luke. And it was just the beginning. The next morning, Claire woke to the sound of her phone buzzing softly on the nightstand. Groggy and hesitant, she reached for it, and saw a message from Luke. "Coffee's on me today. 10 a.m., the Little Sparrow Cafe. No pressure. Just warmth and maybe some company." For a moment, Claire stared at the screen, the card from last night still folded in her coat pocket. Something inside her stirred, a fragile hope she'd buried under layers of fear and exhaustion. She dressed slowly, each movement heavy but purposeful. The thought of sitting in a warm cafe, sharing a cup of coffee with a stranger who'd shown her kindness felt both terrifying and comforting. At the Little Sparrow, the aroma of freshly brewed coffee mingled with soft jazz. Luke was already there, nursing a cappuccino, his legs stretched out beneath the table. When Claire arrived, he stood up, careful not to wince. "Glad you came," he said simply. They talked. At first about small things. The weather, the city's endless noise, favorite books. But as minutes stretched into hours, their words peeled back the walls they'd built around their hearts. Claire spoke quietly of the loss that shadowed her job, Jake's absence, the loneliness that felt like a second skin. Luke shared memories of Emily, the pain of her passing, and his struggles as a single dad trying to keep a promise to a daughter miles away. Neither offered easy answers or empty platitudes. Instead, they listened, truly listened, a bomb both hadn't realized they desperately needed. Over the weeks, their meetings became a lifeline. Luke helped Claire polish her resume and connected her with contacts at a local clinic. Claire, in turn, encouraged Luke to reach out to Mia more often, even helping him prepare for video calls with his daughter. One evening, as snow began to fall softly outside the cafe windows, Luke reached across the table and took Claire's hand in his. The warmth from their touch spread deeper than skin, igniting something tender and real. But life wasn't without its challenges. Claire wrestled with guilt. Was it right to hope for love again when Jake still haunted her dreams? Luke battled the shadows of grief, afraid that opening his heart again meant risking unbearable loss. Yet, in their shared vulnerability, they found strength. Kindness had sparked something neither expected. Not just friendship, but the beginnings of love. Months passed. Claire secured a nursing position at the clinic, her confidence blossoming with every patient she helped. Luke, with Claire's steady support, began organizing local support groups for widowed parents, transforming his pain into purpose. And through it all, the memory of that cold night, the simple cup of coffee passed without expectation, remained a quiet testament to the power of one small act. They didn't know, when Luke crossed the street that night, that he was saving a life. And Claire didn't know that accepting that coffee would be the first step toward healing her broken heart. Together, they learned that kindness could ripple outward, touching lives in ways too profound to measure. It was late spring when Claire found herself standing outside Mercy Hospital once again, the place where she had once felt both purpose and pain. This time, however, she was not an employee but a volunteer, working with patients who had no one else. The job was humble, but it filled her with a quiet joy she hadn't known in months. Luke sat nearby on a worn bench, his leg propped up, but his eyes bright. Mia's laughter echoed softly from his phone during their video call, a sound that brought light to his face even in the darkest moments. Their journey hadn't been easy. There were days when fear threatened to steal their hope, nights when the wounds of the past seemed too deep to overcome. But through every setback, every quiet struggle, they held on to the fragile thread of kindness and love they had spun together. One afternoon, as golden sunlight streamed through the hospital windows, Claire felt a familiar flutter in her chest. Luke reached for her hand, and this time, neither of them pulled away. "I never thought a simple cup of coffee could change everything," Claire whispered, tears glistening in her eyes. Luke smiled, brushing a stray lock of hair from her face. "Neither did I. But it did. Because it wasn't just coffee. It was presence. It was kindness. It was hope." They stood there in the warmth of the moment, surrounded by the hum of healing and renewal all around them. Claire realized something profound, that the life-saving presence she had passed without knowing was never truly invisible. It had been right there all along, waiting patiently in the form of a stranger who chose to care. And in choosing kindness, they had both been saved. Their love wasn't perfect, it carried the scars of the past. But it was real, a testament to the power of compassion in the face of hardship. As they stepped outside into the blooming city, the world felt a little softer, a little brighter. Sometimes, the smallest act, the quietest gesture, could change the course of a life. And sometimes, it took passing by without noticing to find the very thing that could save you.